This BachPod episode, More Than a Whisper, has a trigger warning about the Babylon 5 episode, Believers. This episode depicts child abuse, which leads to child murder, as a result of conservative religious beliefs fighting with medical god complex levels of pride. The majority of that conversation happens between the 3-minute mark and the 23-minute mark. Thank you.
Hello, friends, and welcome to Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Seldin, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle Ngo, and I've seen almost nothing.
And I'm Ethan Quinsey, and I've only watched 2 out of 3 of the following episodes.
Well, for good reason. Also,
but not ever.
No, just for this episode, just for this recap.
You have seen them before, so you get a pass. I often am just like, look, if you've seen it already, you know what happens. That's totally fair. Speaking of those episodes, it is Babylon 5, Season 1, Episodes 10, 11, and 12. Oh boy. Let's talk about the first one and just get it out of the way. How about that? So everyone knows, a lot of religious trauma in this, in Episode 10, and senseless childhood death. It was going to be murder no matter how you sliced it. So I was like, as soon as we knew the hook for this episode, I was like, that kid's just going to get murdered. It's going to be the doctor, it's going to be the parents, one way or the other. But yeah, I'll try to put a timestamp in the very beginning and to hopefully let y'all know to skip ahead. But if you guys are watching along with us, you know, hopefully we'll be able to warn you ahead of time. But yeah, Believers is an extremely tough episode.
So the overview for Believers from The Lurker's Guide to Babylon 5 reads, Dr. Franklin asks Sinclair to intermediate with an alien family who, because of their religious beliefs, refuse to allow surgery that would save their dying child. Yeah. And I did not know this until this exact moment, but this episode was written by David Gerrold of Star Trek The Trouble with Tribbles fame.
Well, that's a bit of a tone shift. Actually, I will always maintain that The Trouble with Tribbles is never as funny as people remember it. I feel like people think that episode is much funnier just because we have that one amazing screen grab of Kirk being covered in tribbles. But, like, that episode is a relatively serious episode. Like, people almost go to war.
Yeah, it's about agricultural espionage.
Yeah. I have a question. Mm-hmm. Is this why, in the middle of this Babylon 5 episode, they have that random line about finger legs and you don't want finger legs on your station?
Oh, my God. Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I didn't catch it.
Probably, yeah. Oh, wow.
Because as I was watching the episode, one of the things I wrote down is, like, Sinclair and Garibaldi are talking about import-export. They have this weird, random little, like, finger legs. You don't want finger legs on your station. And I was like, what's that?
That is 100% a Trouble with Tribbles reference.
Oh my God. Amazing.
Yeah,
amazing.
Yeah. It's...
Wait. Guys, I caught a reference.
You caught a reference! Red letter day.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you're the one that clocked it. I remember, I almost wrote it down because I remember thinking, what is that? But I figured it would be explained like the, what is it? The snoo? The spoo. Like the spoo was explained at some point later. But yeah, I don't know what it is about episodes like this. I know this is going to sound terrible, but I've just seen so many similar episodes or movies or storylines that I am desensitized to it. And I feel like had I originally watched this when it aired, it might have affected me a lot more. But I don't know. I clocked the trope immediately. I was like, oh, cool. So that kid's going to die. That kid's going to die no matter what. Either the doctor won't be able to save him and they will just let him die, or the doctor will save him and the parents will kill him. Like, I clocked it immediately and I was just like, yeah, no, this sucks. It's always going to suck. These storylines always suck.
Yeah, I have to admit, I had a pretty similar reaction because we've gotten like a little bit into this podcast-wise, but not in super specific detail. But I grew up in a very conservative religious environment, which is not the way that I operate anymore for reasons that some of which are covered in this episode. And so that aspect of this episode was certainly hit a little bit close to home. You know, I got my little smidge of religious trauma in there. But I think that my reaction was similar to yours, Joy, where 3 minutes into the episode, and Ethan, thanks to your warning also, I figured out what was going on and was like, ah. And then I was a little bit playing a game on my phone as I was watching this episode.
Fair.
Because I was like, you know what? Like, I know what's going to happen. I took some cursory notes. Every time they had an argument about whose religion and whose belief and da-da-da, I was like, I've heard this all before. I can't. And then I would just sort of play my little game on my phone.
That's fair.
Until the next thing happened in the episode.
The thing I found interesting is I didn't expect Sinclair to side with the religious belief. I thought that was an interesting choice to have the doctor be the extremely logical, their religion is false, your God wants you to live, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, when it's like, well, also we live in an age of like DEI and stuff like that, where I'm just like, you don't know their religion. You did the research after you cured him and sent him home with the parents. Like, you don't know thing one about what they believe, And
right. That was really irresponsible of him, by the way.
A few things. As I said, I can't rewatch this episode because I did see it when I was so young and fairly sheltered. I saw this when I was 15 or 16. And because of that, I didn't see it coming.
Fair. Well, that's what I mean. It would have hit me a lot harder had I seen this when it aired.
It really did. And it was... I did not grow up in a religiously conservative household, so the fact that the parents made the decision that they made kind of cut me off at the ankles a little bit. But it's also a very... It's another one of those things where you can tell the show is really trying to differentiate itself from Star Trek. And I keep bringing up Star Trek because people at the time kept comparing the show to Star Trek, and it really got on Joe Straczynski's nerves.
Well,
so he would occasionally make the point that Sinclair is not Picard.
Sure.
And in a situation like this, I could have absolutely seen Picard siding with the Doctor. Because and this is very strong in my mind right now because my husband and I are rewatching TNG from the beginning, which is, let me tell you, that's painful. No bueno.
Oh no, it
I'm
is.
so sorry.
Seasons like 1 through 3, you have to really want it.
We just finished season 1.
Yeah,
it took us 2 years.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We started it during COVID.
Wow. See, like with TNG, I've seen episodes here and there, but I've never watched it from beginning to end all in one, fell swoop.
But there is this very strong, again, but the point of that digression is that early TNG was still very firmly in Gene Roddenberry's control, and Gene Roddenberry was very much in the vein of, by the time we get out into space, we won't need religion, we won't have bigotry anymore, no one will swear, all this nonsense that just assumes that we're going to evolve into a different species. And that is not this show.
Right.
Everyone on this show is so messy.
Yeah.
And it actually makes sense. We don't learn this for another couple of episodes. But it makes sense that Sinclair would approach this situation with the kind of nuance that he does, because as we find out in episode 12, which we'll discuss later in this episode, he was schooled by Jesuits.
Yes.
This is a man with a Catholic background, but the Catholic background that includes rhetorical training. I was raised Catholic, and the Jesuits, the way that Jesuits approach religion and learning is as close as you come in in the Christianity world. That's about as close as you come to the rabbinical tradition of engaging with your faith. They're not similar, but it's as close as you come. it just makes sense from a character standpoint that this is the decision that Sinclair would make. And it's also very, very, very indicative of Franklin's character, which is science at all costs. I am not going to do any research. I am not going to see if it's safe for me to send this child back to his parents after I have violated their primary religious conviction and basically turned their child into a zombie.
After seeing their reaction to their child, come on. Come on, sir.
The thing I was hoping for was that instead of advocating that the boy return to his parents, he advocate that the boy be adopted by someone else on the station. I was waiting for that to happen. And then I was like, oh, wait, you didn't do any research and you don't know what you're talking about. Cool. You just think the parents are going to thank you because there's a little bit of that. There's like a whisper of that like God complex in there that some doctors have also, where he's...
Oh, I think it's more than a whisper.
Well, I mean, he doesn't say it with his whole chest, but he says it pretty loudly.
Stephen has some issues, we'll say.
But I mean, like,
but like you said, everyone on this ship does, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is so damaged. I say that, and it sounds very twee in a bizarre way, but I mean, everyone here is an adult. There's, we don't have child prodigies on this show. Everyone has been through relationships. Everyone on this station is basically a war veteran in some capacity.
Right.
And everyone is just so deeply, fundamentally screwed up.
Yes, I would say that's true. Here are the things I liked about this episode. We're not counting all the stuff that Ivanova did, which was trying to keep it light, which I appreciated. Here's the things I liked about the main storyline. I liked that the kid wasn't just a mindless following along with their parents' beliefs. Like, yes, there was definitely this is highly ingrained in me. If I have a choice, I prefer to die because this is my belief structure. But there was also definitely an intelligence there that I think a lot of people overlooked. Like, he knew that the toy that the doctor gave him wasn't really an egg. And like, it's just kind of like, don't tell the doctor. I think he really thinks it's an egg, which I thought was so funny. I was just like, oh my God, this kid's got jokes. Oh no.
But he has a level of autonomy and individuality that you do not see, especially at the time. This was 94. That you just didn't see in TV children, especially not, terminally ill, the angelic Dickensian dying TV children.
I know, especially those.
He's not Tiny. He's not Tiny Tim.
Yeah,
no, you're right, Joy. But see, for me, that's very much like I appreciated that. I liked the way it was written. The moment with the egg was great. It made the ending just so much worse.
Oh no, obviously.
Like the fact that they made this little kid into an actual person that you would care about. So, and yet I would not qualify this as hurt so good. I don't think this hurt good. I think this just hurt.
No, I think it just hurt. This goes along with my tolerance for something like this. There's a level of I think shows, episodes like this, because obviously this isn't indicative of the entire show. They're trying to get across a more complicated message. But I think episodes like this are meant to not really make you think, because it did make me think in the beginning, but ultimately I knew where we were going to end. So I was like, well, I mean, you're making me think, but I already know the ending here. They're more about giving you a sense of righteous anger than anything else. Like, you can watch this episode and be like, well, that kid didn't deserve to die. And I think there's a part of me as someone who is so apart from that, like having been brought up in a religion of service, but also not in a religion that also defined sickness as God giving you a lesson or telling you something. God tells you through sickness. and having that barrier of, I don't think that's how sickness works. And like having parents who, on the whole, also didn't think that, although at some point definitely had weird, guilty attachment to that anyway, because again, the religion really drives that home. I also come at it from a perspective of like, right, but germs also exist, though. You can't like be a bad person and the germ is like, aha. Had I been Dr. Franklin, I would have looked up all of that and been like, okay, can I have a conversation with this boy and see if there's a way to have emancipation and find another family, maybe even from the same planet, from a less religious family, to be like, they are still children of the egg. They still believe these things. They just don't believe them as hard as your parents do. So they want you to live. Do you, like, would this be amenable to you?
Because this is a first season episode and we don't see these aliens or these characters again, I don't necessarily look at this as, it's obviously not part of the overall story. I don't even know if we were necessarily meant to be taking away like the message of, fundamentalism bad, because this is not really that kind of show. I can't watch the episode because the plot upsets me, but I think it's an important episode for character building.
Yeah,
because
that's exactly what it's meant to show you.
That is exactly what it's meant to be. It's the first time we get this inkling of Sinclair as a man of very deep spiritual conviction, in a way. And also it's the first really strong indication that we have of Franklin's own personal and professional convictions. Like, we saw a little bit of both in Soul Hunter, because you had Sinclair actually got to see the thing happen.
Right.
And Franklin is just like, well, you saw the thing, but I don't believe it. It's still total nonsense. And it's very, like, I feel like we're setting Franklin up for a huge comeuppance at some point. He is going to run up against something that he can't explain. And it's going to piss him off.
I mean, here's me thinking, like, here's hoping, right? Because he admits at the end of the episode that he was acting out of arrogance, and I'm happy that the episode put that in writing, that it was there, and that they pointed to it and identified that as part of what caused the murder of this child, right? Because, like, you're right, Joy. Like, I don't. Unless the kid consented to being adopted by another family or being accepted or living on Babylon 5 just as part of the Babylon 5 community somehow, right? Like there isn't really a good, quote, good ending here. Yeah. Right? The best ending is a magical world in which this kid is like, I don't feel different. I feel great. Yes, let me stay with you.
Right.
Right? Barring that, I don't know that there was a good outcome here. But the outcome that we got was very, very, very bad. And I know we've said this 4 or 5 times. Part of it was because of the family and because of their beliefs, and I don't agree with them. But part of it was because Dr. Franklin was hugely irresponsible. And that made me so angry. And at the same time, I'm appreciating how complex he is as a character. And because of the way the show is structured, he hasn't become, in my head, like a character I hate.
Right.
Instead, he's become a character that I want to find out more about, get to know, and I'm interested to see where his arc goes.
Yeah, and I think you see that in his reaction to what the parents inevitably do with their child, which is ritualistically murder him, which is, horrifying to walk in on. And even as he walks in on it, they're still explaining to him, like, this was our, explaining to Dr. Franklin, this was our only option. You left us no choice. Franklin has this moment of horror against them, but also, as you said, like this horror against himself for just acting rashly, essentially. And just being like, the thing I found interesting was the second doctor who was giving suggestions, who was like coming at them very hard. And Franklin decided to be diplomatic about it and was just like, I mean, we can try non-invasive things and see what happens, basically wasting the parents' time and hoping they would come around eventually, and just not fully hearing them the entire time. And I think that's an interesting note for Franklin. I think it's also an interesting note for Sinclair. There's definitely, I think it's like you said, Ethan, there's definitely this moment of like, you do have this reference for the Federation. And like, yeah, most Federation captains would 100% agree that it's like, no, just perform the surgery. Like, why would I stand up for religious beliefs that cause harm and cause pain to a child? This would have happened later. But the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, I don't know if the original had an episode like this, but the reboot had an episode dedicated to a woman who was pregnant and didn't want to keep her child. And the human race is dwindling on the edge of existence. And basically, like, you know, people need to start having babies. But then there's this woman who doesn't want to keep her child. So it was this interesting conversation of like, well, what do we do? Do we respect her rights? Do we go to the laws of the society that is no longer in existence? Do we just, you know... And the way they handled it was very strange. It was essentially like she ended up having an abortion, and then like the next day a law went into effect. And it was a very strange...
Oh, I don't remember this.
Yeah, it was a really, really strange thing where it was like, okay, we'll do this one, but then everyone else has to bring their baby to term. It was a very, very weird episode. And I was just like, wait...
This
you
doesn't
didn't
help.
do anything.
No, just when I was a kid, full disclosure, I was so upset by the ending of this episode because for the obvious reasons, but also as I was watching it, I don't know why I thought this was what was going to happen, but I was like, oh, this is going to end up, this kid is he's going to live, his parents are going to disown him, Dr. Franklin's going to adopt him, and he's going to become the perky little child genius of the show. This show does not do perky little child geniuses.
Yeah.
No.
No, but that was the thought I had. I was like, and Dr. Franklin will now adopt you. Like, I don't... that's it.
He has a pet. He has an alien apprentice now. That's not what happens.
That's not how this show do.
This is not how this show do.
No. In a different universe somewhere, they got that version of the show. We didn't. We have this.
Yeah.
But
let's talk about Ivanova.
Ivanova, what was she doing in this episode? I don't really understand why that was there.
She was going stir crazy and wanted to go out to deal with some raiders.
I know. I did love her line at the beginning where she gets irritated at Sinclair. It's like, oh, what should I say? Where she's talking about like pacing back and forth. Why don't I knit something?
Fro, and then Fro and two. And it was just like, oh no.
I love sassy Ivanova.
Best.
She's fantastic.
Absolute best. I didn't quite catch that like B plot. I was a little confused by like, yes, she ran into a bunch of raiders and then but was suddenly fine.
I think my understanding is that she is an amazing fighter pilot and she was able to defeat most of and then escape all of those raider ships, right? Which is why Garibaldi then says, I see that your ship is in need of a week's worth of repairs. What exactly happened there? And she's like, oh, nothing. You know?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing. You know what? I didn't even take away that read. That's a very good read. I don't know how I missed that. You're exactly right. That's 100% how that works. Like, she survived by the skin of her teeth, but she survived. But there were so many raiders.
So many. But she's an awesome fighter pilot.
Yeah. I was trying to see if there were parallels between what Ivanova was dealing with and the main storyline, which I abandoned pretty quickly. But
there was, and this was like so blatantly in our face at the end of the episode. I wrote it down and I was like, I kind of hate this, but fine. You know, but right at the tail end of the episode, one of like some of the survivors from the Asimov start coming on to Babylon 5, and one of the survivors is a little kid who then runs to their family and gives them a big hug. And then Garibaldi, like, Ivanova literally says, like, oh, this worked out nicely or something like that. And then Garibaldi goes, sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. They give each other a look, they go to the bar, and then Garibaldi obviously tells Ivanova about
the thing
what did
about
not
my
work
day.
out. Exactly. So one of them saved a kid and one of them didn't.
Yeah, but it's such a weird, like, luck of the draw, right?
Anyway, we have to move on to episode 11, and I could not think of a good way to segue us nicely into it.
I mean, there isn't
So
one.
here we are.
Yeah.
The overview for survivors from The Lurker's Guide to Babylon 5 reads, Garibaldi's past catches up to him with some disastrous consequences. He is blamed by some for an accident aboard B5, which leads to hitting the bottle again after a prolonged abstinence.
I really enjoyed this episode. This episode had a lot of really interesting Garibaldi history, which I don't think we get to see a lot of.
Not immediately.
Yeah.
We get more of that later, but but this is the first, and we learn that Garibaldi has had a rough life. And I think it was it Infection that was the first episode with the reporter?
Oh, it might have been, yeah. Oh.
Yeah. But the previous episode with the reporter, where she's talking to Garibaldi and says that, you know, he's been kicked off of every star base in Earth jurisdiction, and that this is his last shot. And we get a little bit more information about why. Is that he is an alcoholic.
I am a little sad that we don't see him drinking, like, specifically non-alcoholic drinks.
We see him
bar.
drinking. We do, though. Not
we?
this bar, but whenever he's at a bar, he does have a drink. It's just always water.
Okay,
Water straight up.
Water straight up. They have not, apparently in the future that B5 exists in, no one has invented a mocktail.
This poor man, just give him a tasty beverage that's non-alcoholic. Water straight up.
Straight up. I mean, when you think about it, water in space is a very precious commodity.
I mean, this is also
you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
If you ask for water on the rocks, I want to know what the ice cubes are made of. Or if they're even ice, if you get like water with whiskey stones or something.
Whiskey stone.
Literally on the rocks.
Just cold rocks.
There was a science fiction thing, I want to say it was one of the Alien movies, where they had a cube of whiskey and you like zapped it with a laser to make it liquid. And that was how they drank it. It was like freeze-dried whiskey that was reconstituted. It felt very like synthahol, you know?
That sounds vile.
That's so gross.
Like,
my irradiated
there's no
whiskey.
world.
Right? Like,
Right?
I sat there like, yeah, it's probably, I guess if you're desperate.
No. I guess. I don't
actually
know.
missed
in that situation, I will take water straight up.
I missed that's how he orders his waters. Completely missed
Yes,
it.
he bellies up to a bar and he says to somebody, "I need a drink," and then he looks at the bartender and goes, "Water, straight up." And
it's great.
You know what? It reminded me of Rugrats of all things.
Rugrats.
Yes, because it's the sort of thing one of the babies would say, except they'd go up to the bar and demand milk.
And absolutely. I'll have your best milk. Your freshest.
With a shot of chocolate.
With a shot of chocolate. That's 100% a Rugrats thing. Absolutely. I feel like I can hear
Sidecar of chocolate syrup.
Oh my gosh, my brain just like remembered that awful Catwoman movie with Halle Berry.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember when she orders at the bar?
I do. Oh, wow. That really unlocked something, Danielle.
Oh no, that was so bad.
Oh no. Ah.
Like White Russian hold the vodka or something, and
Yeah,
the cat ordered some
White
milk.
Russian hold the ice, vodka, and Kahlua. You know what's interesting about that is I equated it to one of my favorite television shows, which is Person of Interest, where there's a character on Person of Interest who is a drunk when the series starts, and then after the first episode, you never see him pick up a drink again. You always see him with club soda, and he's always sober. And, like, it's specifically because, like, he felt like he was given a purpose and a life. But it's just really interesting because his character reminds me of Garibaldi so much. Like, the two of them remind me of each other. The character Fusco.
I eagerly await your Person of Interest Babylon 5 crossover fic.
You know, don't tempt me. I've done so many Side note, listeners, I've done so many Person of Interest crossover fics with too many things. My favorite one so far, which like maybe 10 people have read, but I love it dearly, is Saw crossover. And I will die on this hill of like, I love my Saw crossover. It's so good. My wife right now is giving me a thumbs up of like, yeah, you love that fic. She concurs.
I watched Saw to read that fic.
She did. She watched Saw to read that fic. And she thinks I did a good job.
I haven't seen Saw. I
will not be seeing Saw. I will just maybe read the fic. I've also never seen Person of Interest, so maybe I'm just going to stay away from this one.
Person of Interest, let's be very clear, and I know we're off the rails, but that's fine. Person of Interest is nothing like Saw. I wrote a Person of Interest Saw crossover because Michael Emerson is in both. And I was like, but what if twins? And
I see.
And I very specifically decided to expand on the idea of Michael Emerson's character in Saw because he's literally there for 4 seconds. And I was just like, but what if we like expanded on that? And instead of having like you have the one brother who nothing has really gone right in his entire life, but then you have this other brother who hits it really big and is super smart and super rich. And like, what if they didn't know each other existed? Like, it was.
Well, now I really need you to start watching the new Fallout series.
I have. I'm up to like episode 4.
So you have
met Michael Emerson's character. And I love that they gave him a dog. They gave him a dog. And he was 100% limping before the thing. And I was just like, is he limping because he's walking a dog?
We have to get back to Babylon 5.
I know.
By some miracle, we have to get back to Babylon 5.
Here's the thing about Survivors. I wrote down terrorism ? And that was all my notes on Survivors. Survivors is a very entertaining episode to watch. It's really interesting to see the kinds of interpersonal relationships that can influence people in power. And I every time Babylon 5 brings up a political struggle, I feel like they do it really realistically. And that's sort of what I saw here of just like, yes, you can have a political struggle, but you will always have your own personal biases coloring that struggle. You know, you have somebody who works security for Earth President Santiago, which I was just like, did we ever actually meet Santiago, or is he just kind of like, is it just referred to Earth President Santiago and we keep talking to senators?
I think he maybe appears on camera with a speaking line once.
Okay.
I couldn't tell if that was him, Ethan, because like I know the scene you're referring to because in my notes, I couldn't figure out who that person was. So I ended up just writing them down as an official says, da-da-da-da, because I couldn't tell whether it was the president or not.
But I mean, that's almost secondary. But like, I love that someone working a security detail for the Earth president has such a bias against someone else on this station, you know, that they will ignore evidence and like just try and punish specifically Garibaldi for, you know, the pains that they have personally caused them. And I like the dynamic of like the addict and the people they've hurt, where the line is for forgiveness and where the line is for, or what if I just never saw you again and you weren't in my life? You know, like I found it really interesting that was such a an overwhelming amount of this episode, if that makes sense. It's a good episode. I highly recommend people watch it. My notes are like one word.
It doesn't have a lot to say. It's very solid.
That was
It's very, very
super solid episode.
Very solid.
It's just
good plot, good characterization. I my one quibble with the episode is actually very stupid. I hate that Leanna's hair is down in the final scene.
Oh, but she's relaxed now. She's off. She's off duty.
She's clearly not off duty.
Not off. You know, she's like, oh, I'm friendly now.
Yeah, I hate it. I hate it so much.
The subtext is so clearly text.
The subtext is so clearly text that I am being bludgeoned over the head with it, and that offends me.
No, I
Okay, see, I think that reaction that you're describing is like my reaction at the end of episode 10. when the little kid hugs the family and they're like, sometimes it works out. I was like, ugh, I don't care.
You know what it is? I think it suffers from that 90s like there's a lot that this show does really well with subtlety, but every now and then they really have to drive a point home, and I'm just like, did you have to drive that point home?
Very much like Saturday morning. Remember, kids, you know, and you're like,
I'm at home with a semi through my TV screen.
Through my front door.
Through my front door. No, I did. Apart from the hair being down, I love the final scene of this episode because it hurts.
Yeah,
and it's very, you know, Michael and Leanna hug. And the
hug is so good.
And this is a young woman who Michael knew, who Garibaldi knew as when she was a kid, and you know, she spent the last 20 years thinking that he got her father killed, and you know that's why she was out for blood this episode, and it's very, you can see there's forgiveness there, there's reconciliation. But it's also the expression on both of their faces, like they're both struggling not to cry.
Yeah,
and it's not because, oh, you know, this is a weight off my chest. The weight is still there. It is so palpable. Like they are both feeling the loss of 20 odd years. They are feeling the weight of the dead man's memory, and it's just it hurts, and it's so, I don't even know how to describe it. It's very, very visceral.
I feel, I think like poignant comes to mind, and just a really good way of, you know, because people are, you know, like there are kids in situations who depend on people who are addicted to substances and who, you know, screw up time and time again. And I think they really did well with making it not make sense, but making it really realistic of just like, you don't get the sense that she just, you know, forgives him out of nothing. If just like she just sort of owns her own, like, yeah, you know what, I let my own stuff cloud my judgment, you know, like, and at least being able to admit that. But it's just not, you know, it's like a step in the right direction, but ultimately you don't necessarily get full closure, which I also really like.
No, I was going to say, like, I agree with you. I think that's what makes it more realistic, right? Yeah. Because we know that alcoholism is just something Garibaldi's always going to have to live with, right? And learn how and manage. It's not a problem that can be solved. And similarly, like, Ethan, like what you were saying, the way the two of them are feeling, that's never just going to go away, right? So what we get here is this beautiful resolution to this episode, but no solution to any of these problems. They're just left open. But that's real. That's what would happen.
Yeah.
In this span of time.
And I'm so angry that we never see Leanna again.
Oh.
I'm so angry.
Yeah. She was a great character. I like her a lot.
And I just would have loved even like an extra mention of her here and there. But
especially since she works for the president. Like, you think it would be easy to work her back into the show, but I don't know. I guess I don't really know where the show's going. Is the president about to like get assassinated or something? I don't know. But
don't get attached to that president.
Yeah, the president we still haven't seen on screen. I will say another aspect of this episode that I really enjoyed and that I found really entertaining amongst everything else was watching everyone work together behind the scenes to make sure that Garibaldi was not caught. That was fabulous.
Yeah.
Like, they don't know what's going on.
Like Ivanova with her.
They don't know what's going on, but they know he didn't do it.
Absolutely.
Very NCIS.
It is very NCIS. I love that. I absolutely love that.
But it was like the fact that it was like literally, I mean, of course Ivanova was going to have his back, right? And call that maintenance check.
Uh-huh.
But when Jakar turns off the security cams and is like, don't worry, set security down the other hallway. It's like, Jakar.
Yeah, I liked all
And Londo.
Yes, and Londo. I loved
you're
everyone's
right. Londo
reactions to hiding him.
Yes, exactly.
But I especially loved Londo because Londo is like, I mean, I can't do very much, but here's a ton of money because I think you and I are the same, and if you can get away with this, so be it. It's just like Garibaldi,
I will deny ever having seen you.
And then that throwaway line where Jakar knows that Garibaldi is coming because Londo told him but didn't tell him because we're all watching each other.
He's watching me, I'm watching him,
Just
everyone's
so
watching each other. Absolutely.
They're short on entertainment.
They are short on entertainment. I also really like the actor in this episode. I think he did a really good job.
Oh,
Jerry
yeah.
Doyle.
Yeah.
Jerry Doyle.
Yes. Yeah. R.I.P.
Should we move on to the next episode? What should we do?
I mean, I think so. Were there other pieces? I'm trying to think if there were B plots in this one. I can't really think of any.
I think
Not really.
I think
It's a pretty tight
it was
episode.
basically the A plot, A.1 and A.2 plots. Because it was all the same plot. It was just sort of forked in different directions because you had to follow either the command staff or Garibaldi.
Right. Yeah, no, I
Um,
think we can dive into By Any Means Necessary, which was probably
Yeah, because
my
I feel
favorite.
like we're going to have a lot to say about that
It's
episode.
my favorite of
exactly.
these
I'm like,
three.
let's go to that episode.
Okay. So, the overview to By Any Means Necessary reads, an accident in the docking area kills a worker, threatening to spark an illegal strike. Londo, the B plot, Londo interferes in an important Narn religious observation which leads to a confrontation between him and Jakar.
I like that the
love
B
this
plot made it
episode
into.
so much.
I was going to say, I feel like the C plot is Sinclair gets no sleep.
and doesn't shave for 3 days. Just
C plot, Sinclair just wants to go to bed, y'all.
so desperate.
Was
He's
it this
getting the-
episode where he had a 5 o'clock shadow and an open collar? Or was that the
Yes.
first one? Oh, okay.
No, that's
Yes.
this one. And he also at one point tells somebody, "Gentlemen, I'm getting very cranky."
Yeah.
It just
It's
needs to sound
great.
so tired. So this is an episode about a labor strike. And I
Yup.
need to tell our dear listeners that my wife works for a union. And I showed this episode to her. And she has thoughts. Her main takeaway from this is somebody who works for a union and has done press and PR for strike campaigns, is that whoever wrote this episode knew what they were doing.
Ooh.
And also she is horrified at the state of labor relations in 24th century Earth governed stations, because the fact that there is an actual law on the books allowing labor negotiators to call in the military to put down strikes
Yeah.
is horrific. Side note, the Rush Act was named after Rush Limbaugh.
Ooh, interesting.
That's from Joe Straczynski himself. The Rush Act is named after Rush Limbaugh because apparently at the time in the 90s, Rush Limbaugh was actually pushing for military intervention in strikes.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I mean, that tracks.
Doesn't it? Yeah. So this is a situation. This is a very terrible situation for the dock workers who are overworked, underpaid, exhausted, and dealing with subpar equipment.
Yes,
because the station was built, but the contractor who got the bid was the contractor who did the lowballing, which is how things still work. How things work now and how they work 200 years from now.
Yeah. And having worked with people in like jobs similar to the dock workers, like working with people in operations departments as the majority of the work that I do every day, I have to tell you, it's just everyone wants the thing that they want in the time that they want it. And I always have sympathy for folks in this position because because my company is no different. We want it when we want it also. And I do what I can to mitigate my own company's asking of these people because I'm just like, they can only provide so much.
Yep. The laws of physics do not abate because you need your thing faster. The shipping container
Absolutely.
is not going to get here 2 days before schedule. And if it's like stuck on the Ever Given in the Suez Canal, it's not going to get here for a couple of months. There's a toilet paper shortage because there's a global plague. I'm very sorry. The factories just can't produce that fast. And then it's just... So you have this situation with the dock workers, and then something explodes. Someone is killed.
Sorry, it's
just
not funny, but
it's just another. It's just another Thursday,
Yeah.
And I lost my train of thought. Crap. It's just it's the thing that really struck Rosemary, my wife, was that this episode is kind of like strikes 101. It's
right.
all extremely basic, and it's also the kind of strike. It's an illegal strike. This is a wildcat strike because the dock workers are government contractors. They are government workers, so they're not allowed to strike. But because they're on contract, they're also not allowed to quit.
Right.
And that is in New York State, which is where I am. That's the situation for all state employees and teachers, I believe. I had an aunt who worked in the Albany school system back in the 60s, and she nearly got fired for participating in a wildcat strike. But this is a situation that is closer to late 19th and early 20th century strikes, where you would have big business and the National Guard versus a bunch of barefoot miners, basically. That's the level of disparity that is happening here. And it's not the kind of disparity you see in striking situations right now.
Right.
It's more historical. It's the kind of thing that happened up to about the Second World War. Because then labor relations, I don't want to say they improved, but labor conditions started improving because they changed and everybody came back from the army and got jobs.
Yeah. No, this definitely had I'm glad you said like the miners' strike and stuff like that, because that's how this felt, right?
Sorry.
No, it's fine. Go ahead.
I recently listened to an episode of Criminal, which is a different podcast. I'm being very descriptive tonight. I recently listened to an episode of the podcast Criminal about the Ludlow massacre, which was basically a minor. It's basically a strike that got a strike at a Rockefeller-owned mine that got put down by the National Guard. And it's one of the more infamous strikes in at least the eastern U.S.
Oh, I don't know a lot about that.
Excuse me, it's the western. Excuse me, it's the western U.S. because it was in Colorado. But the other thing that really struck Rosemary was the guy that got sent in, the Senate appointed labor negotiator, Mr.
Right. Oh, the worst.
The slimy.
Oh my gosh! Wait, Ethan. In my notes, the first thing after his name is the word slimy in all caps.
His name is Oren Zento, and he's a slime ball.
Yes.
Yep.
As my mother would call him Smarmy, but she would say an smarmy, but like
Smarmy.
as an insult.
Yes. Oh yeah. He is not. The thing that struck Rosemary was the fact that he said that he was there to negotiate in good faith.
Right.
And she pointed at the TV and she said, that's a legal term. In good faith is a legal term. It's legal language and it's binding. And the fact that he is using it to describe his own actions on behalf of the government.
Yeah.
When he is clearly not there to negotiate in good faith. He is there to push buttons and push them into a corner and get the striking workers and their union rep, who is amazing, and I love her.
Yes, me too.
I love her so much. Her name is Neoma Connolly, and I love her.
Is she another person we're never going to see again?
We're never going to see her again. Yeah.
Okay.
What a sad moment.
The nice thing about the characters you never see again is the fact that you don't know if they live or if they die. So you can just believe in your head that they go off and have a very successful, happy life.
Fair, very true.
Zento is not there to negotiate in good faith. He is there to piss people off so that he can call in the military.
He's there to escalate.
Either make people make. Well, he attempts at first, right, to pull the wool over their eyes and placate them by saying just sticking to platitudes. Oh, we're here for you. You all are what's the metaphor they used?
I don't know, the backbone, something like that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, something like, oh, we cut away this and that, but you all are here as the backbone. And it's interesting because there was one moment as Zento was saying all of that where some members of the crowd started actually quieting down. Because there are some people who will react positively to something like that.
To being recognized for their work.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. They're recognizing me. They need me. I feel wanted. Okay, I'm going to do it, right? So he goes for that tactic first, which as a teacher is a very familiar tactic. and then as soon as that doesn't work, the fangs come out.
I've never had to deal with union things too much. Like, I was in a union when I worked a retail job, which I thought was kind of hilarious, but I was like, oh, cool, I guess I'm in a union. But I was only at that job for a very short amount of time. So I didn't fully get to understand all the ins and outs of everything that they provided. And since I have been in hilariously non-unioned positions and just been like, but if everything I've seen on television is to be believed, But no, this episode felt surprisingly realistic from all the conversations I've had with friends and who are familiar with these kinds of talks. And just as Rosemary said, absolutely.
The other thing that miffed her was that she's like, where are the chants? Where are the union songs? There's they could have gotten away with, like, Jakar had a Gilbert and Sullivan number. Where are our space union songs?
That is a really good point. What a lost opportunity. space
Absolutely.
union song.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Missed
That would have been
opportunity.
amazing.
Now my brain, as soon as we're done recording, is just going to try and think of a clever union chant.
Yes, please.
Or like
You
a
have to
union
bring it up in
song.
another
Like, what's
episode.
the rhyme?
Yep.
Well, the thing is though, like, it is so easy to rhyme with the word 5.
Right.
So if you work like Babylon 5 into there somewhere, you can get a really good chant
Alive,
going. I don't know.
thrive, dive, survive. Yeah, there's a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
You got some.
A lot of good
Yep.
ones.
This episode has a B plot that is very enjoyable as well.
It is. I love the B plot. I love it
The B
so
plot
much.
is delightful. And surprisingly, despite the fact that it's quite funny in places, it's also very poignant. It's very sweet. It gives us another side to Jakar that I don't think I would have expected if I was like. Did either of you who are watching this for the first time, did you expect Jakar to suddenly become very, very devoted and sincere in his religious beliefs?
Absolutely not. But that's why I will say I spent a good amount of this episode. I love Jakar and I love the B plot and I liked watching all of that happen. But I was watching all of that happen with like one eyebrow up because I'm like, what is actually happening here? Right? Like it took me, I think it basically took me until almost the end of the episode to acknowledge, like, oh, he does genuinely want to do this thing. He genuinely believes that this is, this is genuinely important to him. I don't know. I thought maybe there was something else going on because I was like, there's no way. There's no way it's just this.
Just that.
And
I think I had a sister
and I even had
reaction to that. I had a...
And, like, even when Londo says that thing about, like, oh, he's just... It's not really about the religion
It's
for
about
him. He's just the face.
Saving face.
Saving
Yeah.
face. Exactly. I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's what it is. Sorry, Joy. I cut you
No.
off.
I have a very, like, sister reaction to that where it's, like, it's very similar but different. Like, I do think... I don't know that I don't think I was particularly surprised. I do think it suffers a little bit from like season 1 stuff where they can just throw in whatever they want and we'll just be like, cool, I guess that's a part of his personality. You know, like singing with the prawn, you know, like doing all of that as well. Like he's genuinely sad when the freight issue happens. Obviously it means more to him than just any loss of life or injury. There's a thing that he says where it's something like, I am the elder, I am meant to lead this. Like, this is my responsibility.
I'm the most senior member of my religion on the station.
Right. See, that clicked for me, where I was just like, see, there's and maybe this is, again, just like the religion I was brought up in. There's like this hierarchy of understanding where you slot in. And even if you don't necessarily believe all the things that the religion says you are supposed to believe, there are rituals and things that you have to do at certain times, especially if you are at a certain rank in certain religions. And I was like, see, that makes sense. Like, he is very tied into his Narn culture and very tied to his people and very much wanting to make his people's lives as easy as possible by any means necessary.
He has a response. Jakar is very aware of his responsibilities towards his people. In a way that Londo, who is his like
foil,
polar opposite / reluctant soulmate, isn't. Like,
right.
Londo is constitutionally allergic to responsibility.
Absolutely. Also Londo has a pantheon of gods to choose from, and he often chooses like the gods of gamblers and drinking and wine and women. And I'm just like, yes, this is Londo. It makes sense.
It's totally Londo. Whereas the Narns seem to be more focused on I'm a bad religious scholar. I don't really know what the terminology for this is, but smaller personal devotional cults, I guess.
Sure.
Cult, not like cult leaving off of the modern negative connotations of the word cult, but little
No,
sects.
yeah. I thought of it more like a collective community-based something or other. Like, I like his conversation with his I almost said second, but that's not who she is.
Natoff, his diplomatic staff, his aide.
Yes, exactly, his aide. Like, I appreciated that conversation of just like, oh, you're not religious, are you? And like, she had a very diplomatic answer. But it was very much like, this is not going to be combative between us. This is just, I understand where you're coming from and you understand where I'm coming from, which I also appreciated.
In fact, he takes advantage of the fact that she doesn't follow this particular religion, right?
Yeah.
She can go and and
"Oh."
commit some thievery, which he is ritually forbidden to do at this time.
Exactly.
See, I feel like Jakar is my level of understanding of like, okay, so if this company is a very Jewish religious company, if I was running said company, I would hire some non-Jews to run it on the days when the Jews couldn't work.
You would hire the Shabbos guys.
Exactly. Why not? Why not?
It's just good business.
It's just smart.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just good business. But no, yeah, I this was my favorite episode of the three. I really like that Sinclair had
Me
a
too.
resolution for everything. And also like having just this is maybe my nerd showing, but like having just had like taken an astronomy class, I was sitting here like, but that's not how the sunlight works. Hang on. I was like, how do you know? Did you already calculate the time? And it's like, no, you didn't. I love that. I love it so much.
Shush. I really like that Sinclair comes up with really good, slightly insane, but completely workable ideas the more sleep deprived he gets.
Yes.
Which
Yes.
this episode has bearing out.
I also like that he comes up with all of these solutions by essentially retreating to his room and reading and researching. Like that I love.
I feel like that was
Sinclair.
the Jesuit priest upbringing.
Yes.
Which is also at the very end when he says, "Never give someone a loaded gun unless you're sure where to point it." That's why I'm like, yeah. This is why he is actually a very good choice to be running this place, is because he is good at nuance.
He's very good at nuance and crazy eyes.
Oh,
as we've established.
and crazy eyes. My goodness. But the thing is, as I rewatched this episode, I realized he came up with the solution to the Docker strike like 20 minutes into the episode, but nobody would let him finish his damn sentence.
I know.
He kept saying, "Now I've been going over the budget, and I think I have found."
Yeah.
And then somebody would interrupt him with a shout, shouting angrily, and he just could never
Right.
finish
Exactly.
the statement.
But we don't have. But the budget isn't. And you're like, just let the man talk.
And then they.
So,
yeah.
I like
Then, he went through the proper channels and got his authority.
He needed to have permission via this terrible Rush Act. He needed to have the authority to call in troops so that he could, and because that is what the text of the act says, that he is empowered by the Earth Senate to end the strike by any means necessary.
yeah.
And the means he chooses are to reallocate funds from the station's military budget to buy new equipment and raise everybody's salaries. And the labor negotiator is so mad.
So mad.
He's so mad. And yes,
Furious.
this will come back to bite Sinclair in the ass.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm happy with that. And I assumed it
Yeah.
would because of sort of the button on the episode, right? Where Hidoshi calls him, thrilled with the result. The Senate has agreed to back off because of public opinion, but Hidoshi makes sure to warn Sinclair that he has made some very powerful enemies. Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
I also, side note, and maybe this is my one more thing, I don't know, I really like the actor that plays Hidoshi. I believe his name is Akai Along. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But I've seen him multiple times. Great actor, super fun to watch. Absolutely. But I think we are at one more things because we're running a little long. So anyone have something? Oh wait, I'm sorry. I do have a second one more thing. The Starliner Asimov is a great name for. I want there to be a fleet of Asimov ships. I don't know why.
Yes.
And for those of you listening at home who might be unfamiliar with Asimov, Asimov is a very well known science fiction author, and just all around fascinating person. Had some very interesting ideas about sci-fi. But yeah, no, I wrote that down with like 3 exclamation marks of the Starliner Asimov, and I underlined it 3 times. Love that little addition.
What is my one more thing?
I know we talked about so many things.
We talked about a lot of what happened in these episodes.
Is it not an Ivanova quote?
I have one fun Ivanova moment. I mean, we already talked about her pacing to and fro and knitting things at the beginning. I do love the moment they gave her where Sinclair tells her to escort Kemmer away. And Ivanova just looks Kemmer straight in the face and says, "You're going to resist, I hope."
I did like that moment. Every now and then her Russian shifts. Every now and then.
Exactly. Like, please resist. It's a great look in her eye.
My one more thing is I just looked at the notes, the Lurker's Guide notes for Believers when and the Fingal eggs are not actually a reference to Trouble with Tribbles.
Oh no!
No, what are they reference to?
They're a reference to one of David Gerald's own novels. I believe it's called Covenant of I believe it's called Covenant of Justice. Which I always forget that David Gerald has written things that aren't about Tribbles.
I love that. Now I'm curious. I'm going to see if I can find the synopsis.
Also, I just want to, because we didn't get to this part of the episode, the whole crux of Jakar, the B plot of By Any Means Necessary, which is that Jakar needs a plant for his religious ritual, and it got blown up in the dock explosion, and the only other person on the station who has this plant that he needs for his ritual is Londo, who refuses to sell it to him, both because Londo is a petty man, and he and Jakar are on opposite sides of everything. And, history and planetary slavery and stuff we'll get into as this series progresses. But mostly because the seeds of this plant, when you drop them into alcohol, it becomes an acid trip.
Oh, and it does.
And Londo wants to trip. Can I say this? Wants to trip balls.
I feel like we've said that before.
You know what? For some reason, I missed out on the fact that it was like an acid trip. Like, I picked up on the fact that it was a controlled substance.
It's like half aphrodisiac and half psychedelic.
That's great. Oh, wait. So then when at the end of the episode, Londo says to Jakar, "I've already had my fun with the plant," he means he's already used a couple of the pods and had a little whoop.
Yep. All
okay,
right.
y'all.
Yep.
I think we've done it. I think our brains have brains for as long as they were going to
they're
brain.
melting. They're melting.
Absolutely.
And I pulled an audible on the question. Wait, but Ethan, do you want to say where to find you first?
All right. Yes, and you can find me at Ethan Quinsey at Patreon and Blue Sky and on Tumblr if you are that kind of nerd at Gaslight Gallows.
And if you're looking for Bach Pod, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can answer the question, what would be your Babylon 5 strike chant? You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/BachPod.
That's right, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the live lobsters in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.